Amazon's algorithms can predict what you'll buy before you do. Their robots navigate warehouses with inch-perfect accuracy. Their delivery routes are optimized to the second. But somewhere in that machine, your employment record, your name, your job history, your professional identity can come out completely mangled. And when it does, you might not even know until a job offer disappears. Today, we're breaking down Amazon employment record corruption. Specifically, what happened in the massive 2024 data breach that exposed millions of workers' records, how background check errors are costing people jobs they deserve, and what you can actually do if your data has been compromised or corrupted. By the end of this episode, you'll understand the full picture of how this happens and have a real roadmap for fighting back. I've got someone who's dug deep into all of this, so let's get into it.
Yeah, and I think the thing that really sets this apart from a typical data story is that we're talking about two separate but deeply connected problems happening at Amazon at the same time. A massive breach that exposed employee records, and a background check system that was already corrupting records before any hacker got involved.
Right, and I want to make sure we untangle those two things clearly for people. So let's start with the breach, because that's the one that made headlines. What actually happened?
So in November 2024, Amazon confirmed a significant data breach. Over 2.8 million lines of Amazon employee data were published on a hacking forum by a threat actor known as NAM3L3S. And the data included names, work email addresses, desk phone numbers, building locations, basically a detailed map of who works where inside Amazon.
Wait, 2.8 million lines? That's not a small leak. That's basically a directory of a significant chunk of Amazon's workforce.
Exactly. And according to reporting from Forbes and Security Spotlight, Amazon was actually the hardest hit company in this entire breach. But here's the part that trips people up. Amazon's own systems were never directly compromised.
Wait, so how did the data get out if Amazon wasn't hacked?
This is where it gets really interesting. The data came out through a third-party property management vendor, a company that had access to Amazon employee contact information. That vendor was hit by what's known as the MOVEit vulnerability, which is a critical flaw in a file transfer software called MOVEit Transfer.
So Amazon employees had their data exposed by a company most of them probably didn't even know had their information.
Precisely. And Amazon spokesperson Adam Montgomery confirmed this publicly, saying, and I'm quoting directly here, Amazon and AWS systems remain secure, and we have not experienced a security event. We were notified about a security event at one of our property management vendors that impacted several of its customers, including Amazon.
So technically Amazon is telling the truth when they say their systems weren't breached. But that's almost beside the point for the employees whose data is now sitting on a hacking forum.
That's the tension right there. And Montgomery also clarified that sensitive data like social security numbers, government identification, and financial information were not accessed. So it's not the worst case scenario, but it's still serious.
Okay, so walk me through this MOVEit vulnerability, because I think a lot of people have heard the name but don't really know what it is.
So MOVEit Transfer is a widely used enterprise file transfer platform. Companies use it to securely move sensitive data around. The vulnerability, cataloged as CVE 2023334362, was a critical SQL injection flaw. What that means in plain terms is that attackers could bypass authentication entirely and just walk into the database without needing a password.
That's a pretty fundamental failure.
It really is. And the timing of when this was first exploited, May 2023, over the US Memorial Day holiday weekend, that's not an accident. Attackers know that corporate security teams are running at skeleton crew levels over long holiday weekends.
That's almost calculated. Strike when the defenders are at their weakest.
And Amazon wasn't alone. According to reporting from ThreatResQ on LinkedIn, other major companies, including HP, Lenovo, and British Telecom, were also impacted. The total across all affected organizations was over 5 million stolen records posted on cybercrime forums.
5 million records. And NAM3L3S also hit 25 other companies beyond Amazon, right?
Yes, and here's the part that should make everyone uncomfortable. NAM3L3S claimed in public statements that the 2.8 million lines of Amazon data they published represents less than 1% of their total cache. They claim to have well over 250 terabytes of archived database files.
So what we know about is just the tip of a genuinely massive iceberg.
And they've explicitly warned companies to pay attention. threatening to release data from up to 1,000 previously unseen breaches. This isn't a one-and-done situation.
Okay, so now I want to pivot to the second problem, the background check corruption issue, because this one is actually affecting people's ability to get hired at Amazon in the first place. How does that system work?
So Amazon hires at a scale that's almost hard to comprehend. Over 1 million employees in the US alone, according to consumer attorneys. To manage that, they rely heavily on third-party background check agencies. Companies like Accurate Background run these checks on Amazon's behalf.
And what do those checks actually look at?
It depends on the role. For warehouse and fulfillment center jobs, the focus is on criminal history. For delivery drivers or Amazon Flex workers, they also pull motor vehicle records. And across the board, they're typically looking at records from the past 7 years, though that can vary by state.
That sounds reasonable on paper. So where does it break down?
The breakdown happens in the automation. Millions of names, dates, and records are rushing through this system every year. And as consumer attorneys put it, most emerge unscathed, but some come out mangled. A clerical error becomes a criminal record. A dismissed case reads like a conviction. A stranger's file gets stapled to your name.
A stranger's file gets stapled to your name. That's a terrifying phrase. That's not a minor glitch. That's someone else's entire history being attached to you.
And the consequences are real. Jobs vanish, not because you did something wrong, but because a system built for speed decided it knew who you were. And the person on the other end of that decision often has no idea why they were rejected.
There's actually a real story about this. Someone named Jeremy, right? From the consumer attorneys reporting?
Yes. Jeremy lost his job to a data mix-up. His background check contained errors that didn't reflect his actual record. But he disputed it, went through the legal process, and ultimately won justice. His case is highlighted by consumer attorneys as an example of what's possible when you know your rights.
And that's the key thing, knowing your rights. What rights do people actually have here?
The Fair Credit Reporting Act, the FCRA, is the main legal framework here. It gives you the right to dispute inaccurate information in your background check report. You have the right to know which information caused you to be rejected, and you have the right to get a copy of your report.
So if Amazon denies you based on a background check, they have to tell you what was in that report?
Exactly. And according to Freedom for All Americans, if the denial is based on an error, you have the right to dispute it, and you don't have to go through that process alone. Consumer protection attorneys can help you navigate it, and if the error caused you real harm, lost wages, reputational damage, you may be entitled to compensation.
I want to make sure we're drawing a clear line here, though, because I think some people might conflate these two things. There's a difference between Amazon legitimately denying someone because of an accurate record and Amazon denying someone because of an error.
That's a really important distinction. Freedom for All Americans makes this point explicitly. There's a difference between Amazon denying you employment because of a felony when you have an actual felony conviction versus when you have a misdemeanor that's been incorrectly reported as a felony. The legal system can help with the errors, not with the accurate records.
Right. So the fight is specifically about inaccuracy, not about disagreeing with Amazon's policies.
Correct. And Consumer Justice Law Firm points out that Amazon's background checks can also flag things like outdated or incomplete information. Records that are technically in the system but shouldn't be influencing a hiring decision anymore.
Now, I want to connect these two problems, the breach and the background check errors, because I think there's something bigger going on here that we haven't fully named yet.
Yeah, go ahead.
Both of these issues, the data breach through a vendor and the background check errors through a third-party agency, they both come down to the same structural reality. Amazon's scale means they outsource enormous amounts of data handling to third parties. And when those third parties fail, Amazon employees and applicants pay the price.
That's exactly right. And the threat rescue analysis on LinkedIn makes this point clearly. Even though Amazon's core systems remain secure in the breach, the incident highlights how third-party vulnerabilities can jeopardize your organization's security. The chain is only as strong as its weakest vendor.
And the downstream effects of the breach aren't just about the data that was exposed. What are the actual risks for the employees whose information is now out there?
So the data that was exposed, names, work emails, phone numbers, building locations, and even organizational structures and cost center codes, that's a goldmine for social engineering attacks. Threat Rescue specifically flags this. The level of detail increases the risk of phishing attempts, where someone impersonates a colleague or manager to extract more sensitive information.
So even though social security numbers weren't taken, the data that was taken can be used to get to that kind of information through manipulation.
Exactly. If someone knows your name, your work email, your desk phone number, and what building you work in, they can craft a very convincing phishing email or phone call. That's the secondary risk that doesn't always get talked about in the initial breach reporting.
And this is also not Amazon's first rodeo with data issues. There was a separate incident in January 2020, right?
Yes. According to cybersecurity case studies, in January 2020, Amazon experienced a data breach where customer email addresses and phone numbers were exposed to an unauthorized third party, and that breach came from Amazon employees leaking data in violation of company policies. Amazon terminated those employees and launched a law enforcement investigation, but notably never disclosed how many customers were impacted.
So the 2024 breach was external, a hacker exploiting a vendor, and the 2020 breach was internal, employees leaking data. Two completely different threat vectors, same company.
Which tells you something about the complexity of protecting data at this scale. It's not just about building a wall against outside attackers. The risks come from everywhere: vendors, employees, automated systems that make errors.
Okay, so let's get practical. If someone is listening to this and they're an Amazon employee or they've applied to Amazon and they're worried about their records, what should they actually do?
A few concrete steps. First, if you're an Amazon employee concerned about the breach, the data that was exposed was work contact information. So be extra vigilant about phishing emails and suspicious phone calls that seem to know details about your workplace. Don't click links in unexpected emails, even if they look like they're from Amazon.
And for people dealing with background check errors specifically?
If you've been denied a job at Amazon and you believe it's based on an error, you have the right to request a copy of your background check report. Review it carefully. If you find inaccuracies, you can dispute them directly with the background check agency. And if the error caused you real harm, a lost job offer, lost wages, consumer attorneys and consumer justice law firm both recommend consulting a consumer protection attorney who specializes in FVR violations.
And Amazon does have official channels for employment-related issues, right? Like HR Service Central?
Yes, Amazon has HR Service Central and an employee documents portal for current employees. For hiring-related issues, Amazon's official hiring support at hiring.amazon.com is the starting point. And for broader concerns about workplace issues, Amazon has a human rights and environmental complaints portal where issues can be reported anonymously or with an account.
That's actually a wider range of options than I think most people realize exists.
The challenge is knowing they exist and knowing which one applies to your situation. Most people who get a rejection letter don't know they can request the report that caused it, let alone that they have legal rights around it.
And that information gap is kind of the whole problem, isn't it? Amazon has the infrastructure, the legal framework exists, but the average person applying for a warehouse job doesn't know any of this.
That's the core tension. The system is built for scale and speed, and the individual gets lost in it. Jeremy's story is a good example of what happens when someone does know their rights and fights back, but most people don't get that far.
So when you step back from everything we've covered today, the breach, the background check errors, the third-party vendor problem, what's the through line here?
Here's what this really comes down to. Amazon's precision is real, but it's applied unevenly. The logistics are optimized to the second. The algorithms are sharp, but the systems that handle people's records, whether that's a vendor managing employee contact data or a background check agency processing millions of applications, those systems have real failure points, and the consequences fall on individuals.
And the 2024 breach is a perfect illustration of that. Amazon's own systems held, but a property management vendor, a company most Amazon employees probably never thought about, became the weak link that exposed 2.8 million lines of their data.
And the background check problem shows the same pattern from a different angle. Amazon outsources the screening to third-party agencies. Those agencies make errors, and the person who loses a job offer has to navigate a legal framework most people don't know exists to get any kind of remedy.
So what's the actionable takeaway for someone listening right now?
3 things. 1, if you're an Amazon employee, be on high alert for phishing and social engineering attempts, because the data that was exposed in the breach is exactly what someone needs to craft a convincing attack. 2, if you've been denied a job at Amazon, request your background check report immediately. You have that right under the FCRA. 3, if you find errors in that report, don't just accept the rejection. Dispute it. And if the error caused real harm, talk to a consumer protection attorney.
And I'd add, understand that this isn't just an Amazon problem. HP, Lenovo, British Telecom, they were all hit in the same MOVEit breach. The third-party vendor risk is everywhere. The question is whether the companies you work for are taking it seriously.
That's a really important point. The MOVEit vulnerability affected over 5 million records across dozens of organizations. This is an industry-wide failure of vendor risk management, not just an Amazon story.
We started this episode talking about Amazon's precision, algorithms that predict your purchases, robots with inch-perfect accuracy, delivery routes optimized to the second. And all of that is real. But precision in logistics doesn't automatically translate to precision in how people's records are handled. That gap is where 2.8 million employees found their data on a hacking forum. That gap is where Jeremy lost a job he deserved. Knowing that gap exists and knowing you have rights within it, that's what changes the equation.
And the good news is the tools to fight back exist. The FCRA, the dispute process, the legal system, they're not perfect, but they're there. The first step is just knowing to use them.
Thanks for listening to Copilot Podcasts. If your employment record has been corrupted by a system that was supposed to be precise, you now know it's not just you. It's not random, and it's not something you have to accept.